Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me once again. Now, if you remember rightly, at the end of my last video, I was desperate to go out and try my new Z9 that I'd just taken out of the box for you. Well, I grabbed a spare battery, popped it in the camera, jumped in the car and drove to a nature reserve. And do you know what? I ended up coming home with this image. I'm quite pleased with it. And more than that, it inspired me to share my first experience of using my new Z9 with you guys. Now, my first impression of using this camera was that it's reassuringly solid and absolutely deserving of the title Flagship Pro model, if only for its build quality alone. It was really something I was worried about, and apart from the slightly odd memory card cover, I do feel totally reassured that when I inevitably drop it, the camera won't shatter into a million pieces and scatter over a large area. Anyway, before I got to use it, there were a few adjustments to make, and the most important to me was the way the FN4 button worked. You see, the trouble is the button's positioned where the playback button used to be. And as I knew that was going to absolutely drive me mad, I reset it to playback, if only to save my own sanity. And just for the record, by default it was set for picture control. Now the rest of the changes were things like choosing raw image quality, adjust the auto ISO from 64 to 10,000 and colour space to Adobe, also frames per second to high, etc. There's a brilliant website by Bill Maynard that gives some really useful information on setting up the Z9 for wildlife photography, as well as other stuff about wildlife photography. It's fantastic. I'll put the link below for you. Like everyone else, I've watched all the promotional videos from Nikon. I've shown them to you, and I've seen a number of YouTube videos extolling its virtue, and I've read loads of first-hand experiences. But do you know what? To actually use the Z9 to handle it, that's a different experience completely. Why? Because some cameras handle well, some tick the top boxes, but just a few give me the confidence to go for shots that I'd not normally bother or even think of, especially first time round. Those images that are spawned from previous successes, in fact. Oh, I've gone all arty. I'll make more sense as we go on. Now, I arrived at the nature reserve, popped the Z70-200 on the camera, and almost immediately spotted a swan adjusting its plumage. This was one of my first shots, and it's okay, nothing stunning, but it's functional. The camera, on the other hand, felt smooth, and I loved the extra frames per second. At this point, I was using 3D tracking and animal detection mode. The focus stayed on the swan most of the time, mostly choosing the body. I was amazed, to be quite honest, that at this distance it was finding the head and the eye when it appeared. Yes, the camera occasionally found a reflection, but give it a break. That's a really complex scene to analyse, isn't it? I set the camera for 1600 shutter speed and my aperture jumped between f2.8 and f3.2. Now, I don't normally use auto ISO, but I wanted to concentrate on the camera. As you can see, the viewfinder looks really natural and I wasn't aware of any lag at all. In fact, I quickly forgot that I wasn't using a DSLR, I was in fact using a mirrorless. I only shot in short bursts, now that's mainly because that's my style, but I'd also only brought a couple of memory cards that were in the camera. One of them was the Delkin Black 128GB CF Express cards, and I'd got a 64GB Sony XQD. So, to misquote Jaws, I think we need a bigger card. Anyway, talking of bursts and frames per second, let's take a look at this set of shots. A few things you need to know. Firstly, every image that I show you in this video, apart from the first one, is raw. It's straight from the camera, and all I've done is crop them so they fit in the video. Secondly, I was shooting at 2.8. Not exactly a huge depth of field. And thirdly, I really wasn't that close to the swans. And for these I was still only using the Z70-200, remember. So these are cropped in quite a lot. But that's okay, that's fine. Thanks to the 45.7 sensor, I've got plenty of stuff to play with. Plenty of file. Do you know, I was so impressed by the shots I was getting that I kept moving position. I tried to get lower and closer to the water. I aimed to get the background as dark as possible. This was all without getting wet. But that's what I mean about confidence in the camera encouraging me to try harder. I also realised that the Swan wasn't alone, but a parent with 2 cygnets. I tell you what, good grief, they were such fun as they kept doing a funny combination of flying and running across the water. I wasn't convinced that the camera focus could keep up with them, or if I'd even got the right setting. But do you know, these are okay, aren't they? I tested the different focus modes using wide area, large and small, as well as auto area. And do you know, not once did I feel the need to use single point focus, and that's usually my default setting. Now, I'm not saying that the Z9 focus is infallible, it's not. But from 1,376 shots that I took, there's really only a handful that aren't keepers, and do you know, that is some kind of record. Anyway, after a while I swapped to my 300mm lens so I could test the focus using my older FTZ adapter. There really wasn't any difference in the way the focus behaved, and as you can see, they're just as sharp. When I got home, however, there were a few things to deal with. My card reader, the popular Sony MR-WE90, doesn't read CF Express cards, so I tethered the camera to my PC. The 1,706 images took just over an hour to download that way. I would not recommend that in any way. So while I was waiting, I actually ordered a new reader. Once they were downloaded, I tried to view the raw images on Adobe Bridge, but I couldn't. Then I tried to open them using Camera Raw, and again I couldn't. But a quick update of both sorted it out, which is absolutely brilliant, so that means that Adobe is up to date. I could have used NX Studio from Nikon, of course, but I prefer to stick with Adobe for the time being. So the question is, could I have got this image with another camera? Well, yes, of course. But would I have tried it first time out with a new camera? Absolutely not. I'd be far too busy trying to get used to it. You see, it seems to me that after my first time out with the Z9, it ticks all my boxes. In fact, it's inventing new boxes to tick. My next plan is to try birds in flight and running dogs, both by panning and the tricky flat out towards me. And I'll be using a black dog because that'll test it. So thank you so much for joining me on my Z9 journey, and I hope to see you again soon. In the meantime, if you like this video, you know what to do, like it. And if you really liked it, please, please, please subscribe it, especially if you want to see what else I do with this. Okay, take care and see you soon. Bye.